Well, thank you for being here on a live tour. Today we have Rafael Gomez, and I am so happy to have him here. He's got an amazing story to tell you, but what we're going to talk about is habits for leaders, which I think is wonderful. And there goes my screen again. I changed my monitor, but I think it's my computer starting to go. So I am going to get out of the picture here and just kind of be a background voice and let you talk. So maybe introduce yourself a little bit to everybody and go from there.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Hey, thank you so much for having me also. I really appreciate you. One of the things that I just, in case somebody wants to know a little bit about me, I am a martial artist. I'm a father. I'm a person who always is looking to grow as a family man, as an entrepreneur, as a person who's always understanding that the world needs to change, but we are the ones that are the change masters, if you will. We need to change ourselves first. And that's why I want to talk today about habits and what a leader can do to create better habits for themselves. When we think about a habit is something that we start from very early on. We understand a habit is a reaction to something. When someone is hungry as a child, what happens? They cry. So in order to get fed, we understand that if I have an action, there's going to be a reaction to this. So that's the beginning of a habit. If I cry, I'm going to get fed. If I soil myself and I cry, I'm going to get changed. So we learn habits very early on. And then we start developing other habits that people put in place for us. For example, brushing your teeth. How often do you brush your teeth? In the beginning, not often, because our parents had a fight with us. We don't want that in our mouth, all these different things. But when we understand the concepts that, hey, you know what? I don't want to go to the dentist. I want to brush my teeth more often so that I avoid going to the dentist. I don't like going to the doctor because every time I go, he gives me an injection. Well, maybe I need to eat healthier. Maybe I need to do certain things. So then we get into the stages in our lives where we can create bad habits from our peers. So a bad habit can be smoking. If your friends are smoking, you may want to start smoking. If your friends are drinking, you may want to start drinking. And you may think, oh, this is not a habit. This is not who I am. Meanwhile, without thinking, you're either smoking, drinking, overeating, all these different things that are happening in your life, and you're not in control of it because it became a habit. So how do we understand the habits as a leader? What is it that we do every day that will impact our lives? How do we talk to people? That can also be a habit. Do we think before we speak? Do we understand the impact of our words? Do we understand the impact of our message? And that to me is a habit of thinking first, understanding who you're speaking to as well. So for me, I've created a habit of, because I have to talk to different people throughout my day. Sometimes I may be talking to a loved one, right? And the way I talk to them is going to be very different than the way I would talk to a customer. Very different and not very different, because I still want to come with a compassion when I talk to anyone. It doesn't matter if they're a customer or a family or even a loved one. So I always want to show up with compassion. So for me, it's the habit of understanding of who am I speaking with, who my audience is. And I create a habit of, for example, when I teach a class, I may be teaching a class of 5-year-olds, and I understand that I have to be more animated and a little bit less strict than if I was teaching a bunch of 30 to 40-year-olds, or if I'm teaching teenagers. So the fluidity of my approach has to be different for every audience I engage. What if I'm talking to a seasoned expert on business, or I'm talking to someone who is my client and they want me to help them with their business? What if I am speaking to someone who needs personal advice? So everywhere I go, I create a habit of how I speak to them. What if I'm going to speak to an audience? It's very different than if I'm going to speak to an individual. Like I'm talking to you guys today, and you're an audience, even though this is a virtual event and I'm here with you, but I don't see you. So I'm hoping that this message comes across, that as a leader, we have to create the habit of being present. A lot of people don't function alone very well. And what I mean by that is that they always need someone around them. They need to be surrounded with people in order for them to function. For me, one of my habits is meditation. So every day, every morning, I meditate. Every morning, I go work out. As a leader, I'm also reading. And that's a habit that most readers and leaders need to get into on a regular basis. To be a leader, I truly believe you have to be a reader, right? Because if you only are thinking of what you have in here, but you don't bring in other people to share their thoughts with you. And if you look behind me, I have tons of books, and a lot of these books have been shared by the actual authors with me because they've been on my shows. So when someone gives me a book, I make an effort to read it. And there's certain books that I read over and over and over and over again, because when I read it, I may get a different message. And not only do I read a book, but I take notes on it because I want to understand what that message is that I'm getting. And so for me, as a leader, I think we have to take notes on the messages we encounter daily. And I believe all leaders, in order to lead, also need to learn to follow. So for me, that's a big tip. You can't be a leader unless you're a great follower. So leading for me is following other people who may be doing things that may be similar to what I'm doing, or even in a different industry than what I'm doing, because they may come across to be the same or similar. Or I can take an idea from someone else's industry and incorporate it into mine. And then all of a sudden there's that evolution of creativity. Because if we think about 30 years ago, where was technology then? I believe it was always present. I believe 100 years ago, the technology we have today was there. We just didn't have the know-how of how to bring it into the present time. So for me, it's always, as a leader, always thinking, always try to figuring out what is it that I can be doing every day and creating a habit of doing it every day. And one of the habits that I do, like I said, is meditating. but the other habit is asking for advice. I think that is one of the biggest, the number one thing that we can do as leaders. Get into the habit of asking not only for advice, but for help. There is no one in the world who is ever successful alone. No one. The President of the United States is not the president alone. He may have the title, but without his staff, the cabinet, his spouse, his children, his advisors, he would not be a great leader. So what kind of a leader can you be? Get into the habit of asking for help, asking for advice. So what do you think? Do you have any questions for me that I can help you out with?
Oh, I really love this. While you're talking about leaders that have advisors, I think about, you mentioned our president, I think about characters in the Bible. I don't know if characters is the right word, though some of them really were characters. They all had advisors that they go to. Leaders of every country has advisors. CEOs of companies do not just run the company on their own. They have people that they talk to. Maybe they have a best friend even that they go to. Everybody has advisors. And you brought up that leaders are readers. I have heard that so much this year, especially that, and it reminds me of when we're talking about finances, in say a town, you've got a town that, brings in their money, it keeps going like that. But if you don't have new money coming in, money from outside sources, eventually your revenue just isn't working anymore and your town's going to dry up. It sounds weird, until you start understanding the aspects of that. But I see that with the same thing. You have to have this new information coming in. The other thing too is if you are not reading and seeing what others are doing, you're not going to have anything to help stimulate your brain to like, oh, hey, that's a good idea, but what if I did it this way? Right. And then you go on from there. And I love that you said leaders are followers because we also follow others. John Maxwell, he follows what the Bible says. He doesn't just go on his own. You see all of these great leaders that we look up to and that we listen to and whatnot, and they all exhibit the same things. Like you said, they're avid readers themselves. They all had advisors. They have people that they are following, that they are learning for. One thing that I've learned, and those people, most of my listeners know I've just been on this journey for about a year, and I hear over and over again is you don't ever take advice from someone who doesn't have a mentor or a coach themselves, someone to help guide them. And I see that it's so easy to get stagnant. That's just really powerful. I think there were a couple of questions what's one habit that you change regularly? And that sounds confusing to me because a habit is something that's there all the time and you eventually don't even think about it. You're just doing it. So how do you change a habit regularly?
Well, when I started understanding habits, then I said, everyone in the world lives their lives based on habits. So I made a decision to become a habit master.
Oh.
What do I mean by that? I don't have to do anything for anyone else, but I have to do it for me. And what I mean by that is I have to see what my actions are every single day with every circumstance, every hour, every day. I am looking at, did I just do that? And was that because of a habit or is it because it was convenient or it was easy to do? So every day I always ask myself, what shoe did I put on? I'm going to put on the other shoe just to mess around, right? If you're in the habit of driving to work or taking the public transportation, however you go to work or your office or wherever you go, if you always go in the same way every single time, it becomes a habit. But if you only live on a one road community and you have no choice but to go down that road, how can you change that? You can drive backwards, but that's not going to be cool, right? The other thing is that you can say, for the first part of my trip, I'm going to, maybe I'm going to smile, or I'm going to see everything on my left. Of course, I have to look forward as well on my right, but I'm going to try to see and count something on my left. And now maybe on the other part, I'm going to see something on the right. Or one of the things I always had my kids do so they wouldn't be asking, are we there yet? I would ask them to have multiplication tables. I always had multiplication tables with me, and I would be asking them questions. So it wouldn't be the same mundane drive. Even if we drove to the same place, I would ask them different questions. I would say, let's play a game. Let's do this. Let's do that. Even though we're doing the same thing, I change it up. So once I understood that I can do the same thing, I can brush my teeth, but I don't have to do it the same way every day. I can do it standing on one leg. And now I can do it looking into the mirror, or I can do it squatting, or I can do it while I'm just focusing on one side of my mouth or on the other side, or I can just close my eyes. And can you close your eyes and brush your teeth? Of course you can. If the lights went out, can you still brush your teeth? People are going to go, I can't see. Well, what are you looking for when you're brushing your teeth? So it's everything that we do, we can change. So a lot of times people are so habitual that they try to conduct other people's lives through their own habits. For example, when I was young, I was at a restaurant with my family, and the waitress came over and I said, I'm going to have dessert first. It tortured her. It absolutely tortured her. She's like, I can't do that. And I'm like, why not? She goes, it's going to ruin your appetite. I said, I can eat. She goes, I can't bring you your dessert. I said, well, then maybe your manager will bring me my dessert. She goes, okay. So I messed her up. So she brought me my dessert. And then I still had full meal because I'm so active. And when I was younger, I didn't understand that sugar was no good for you, right? I thought, oh, I'm working out, no big deal. But sugar is the number one. I guess you would say sugar is the number one. I want to say this correctly. It's the number one habit causing detrimental ingredient to your health. It is the number one thing that can mess you up, because there have been so many studies done on it lately on how bad sugar is for your body. There is natural sugar that we can take, but we should not be adding sugar. So the sweets, and we all are guilty of having sweets. I know I have a sweet tooth. So for me, it's incredible to not add even coffee, to add sugar. But when I was young, I used to add eight sugars to my coffee like a lunatic. And then when I learned that sugar is actually going to hurt me, I said, well, that's a habit that I've been doing. How do I change it? And for me to go cold turkey on stopping 8 sugars would have been a bad way to change my habit. So bad habit. adding 8 sugars to my coffee. How do I change it? If I do it cold turkey, it won't be sustainable. How do I do it? So then I said, what if I only add 6? Can I live with 6? Yeah, I could do that. And then 5, and then 4, and then 3, and then 2, then 1, and now 0, right? But what I did was change the habit. You can't get rid of a habit. You have to change it and add a different habit to it. So for me, it was, what's my habit? My habit is to put 8 sugars, right? Full of sugar, the full, probably even tablespoons, which is crazy. And then I reduced it to teaspoons. And then I went down in numbers. And now I don't even think about it, because slowly I changed the habit from having to put sugar in my coffee to no sugar. And so once I understood that I can change the outcome of my life, I can help other people. But I can't tell people to do it exactly my way, because my way, as some parents will say to their kids, it's my way or the highway. That doesn't work. That's not how you get a kid or a teenager to change their bad habits. What we have to do is replace them with a habit that replaces a bad with a good. Now, if somebody says, hey, you know what? I eat pizza every day. Okay. So how do you go from eating pizza every day to maybe eating it once a week, to maybe once a month, to maybe once a year? How do you do that? Slowly. You have to say, well, what other foods can you substitute for that? What is it that you're really looking for? Is it the sauce? Is it the cheese? Is it the bread part of it? So it's substituting, right? I had a client of mine who desperately wanted to quit smoking and tried over and over to quit, many times over, and they would come back and continue to smoke. So when they said to me, you know how to change habits, what I've done all these different techniques, it's still not working for me. It may work for a couple of months, but all of a sudden it comes back. I said, okay, are you willing to try something? Before you change a habit that's bad, you have to change it in your head. The physical aspects are one thing, but the mental aspects are what really take you to the next level. So what I said to her is, do you have a pair of scissors? She said, sure. I said, great. I said, show me your scissors. So she showed me this nice big pair of scissors. I said, no, let me see. I actually have a pair here. You have to get little scissors like this, right? So little scissors that you can actually put with your pack of cigarettes. She was smoking a pack of cigarettes every single day. Every day, a pack. So I said to her, she's like, what should I do? You know, like half a pack? I said, no, continue the whole pack. And she goes, well, how am I going to stop? I said, take the scissors and cut a quarter of the cigarette off. And she kind of smiled. And I said, yeah, just cut a quarter off and throw it in the garbage. You're still going to smoke. In your mind, you're still smoking a cigarette. But in actuality, you're smoking 3/4 of it. So instead of smoking those 20 cigarettes that's in a pack, you're now smoking a lot less. And she goes, well, should I do that for one pack? I said, no, do that until you realize that you want to start cutting more off, until you go, I can live with a little bit less, and then you cut it off. And eventually you're going to be wound up with a tiny little bit of cigarette that you're going to just light up, take 2 puffs or 3 puffs or 4 puffs, and then the cigarette's done. But in your mind, you still smoked. We're on month 7. Can I tell you? She is doing great.
Awesome.
But it's because she, in her mind, still thinks that she's smoking a full cigarette, but she's not. She knows it now. She's starting to understand it. But did we rush and make it in a month you're going to quit? No. We allowed the time that it requires. So sometimes you have to take the time to make something work for you. She may be totally done with her cigarettes in a couple of months. I don't know. It's not up to me. It's up to her. But what habits can you change today? What can you do to improve your life? So for me, I see habits as a necessity to stay safe. What's the first thing you do when you get in your car? You open the door, you get in. A habit, a good habit, is to put on your seatbelt. You don't think about it. When you were learning to drive, probably your parents said, hey, make sure you put on your seatbelt, put on your seatbelt, put on your seatbelt, put on your seatbelt. And people go, oh, it's annoying. It's tugging at me. So then they have those things that you can buy that's they have a little cushion to your seatbelt. You can buy that. If that's what you need, that's what you need. But so you create a way to work around it. But if you don't wear the seatbelt, you may die if you have an accident. If you don't have an accident, the seatbelt didn't work. The seatbelt only works if you have an accident. But you will not be fast enough to put on your seatbelt in the middle of an accident. Right?
True.
So this is why we brush our teeth. You don't start brushing your teeth when your teeth fall out. You start brushing your teeth before. You go to get a general checkup every year to find out before a symptom comes up. You take your vitamins so that you can have a healthier body. And then, a lot of people eat because it's a habit.
Yes.
But there's intermittent fasting now. You don't have to eat every hour. You actually should give your body a chance to process the food it's eaten. So what habit do I change every day? Every one of them.
Oh.
I don't allow my habits to control me. That's what I do every day.
I like that. You don't allow your habits to control you.
Not at all.
Yeah, that's great. I love the example you gave too, that, instead of just quitting cold turkey, or instead of making these dramatic changes, maybe just make a little adjustment to how you're doing your habit, and go from there. Wow, that's really valuable. There's so many more questions I have for you, and so many more things I want to talk about. I'm going to have you come back. This half hour goes so fast. I really appreciate you being here today and talking to us about habits and about leadership and what we need to do. And if you want to get a hold of you, I've got your link in the description section so they can find you. Do you have some place where they can go to find out more about you, or how to learn from you?
Sure. I mean, if they look me up on LinkedIn, Sifu Rafael, or on Facebook, Sifu Rafael, there I am. Just looking to connect with people, impact people's lives. My goal is to impact as many people as possible. But sometimes that's a goal that will not be possible. My goal is to impact leaders so they can impact their tribe. So the more tribes, chiefs that I can impact, the better, so that we can change the world through our habits, through our leadership, through our love, because I believe that love has a place, and it should have a place in everyone's home and in everyone's heart.
I love that. I love that so much. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you, my pride and joy,
Oh,
for
my
being
pleasure.
here on A Live to Roar. And I
appreciate
hope
you.
to see you soon. I really would love to have you
Yes.
back and talk more. All right. So thank you. And we'll see you next time on A Live to Roar. Okay. I've got
Thank
the
you. Have a
live
great
stream
day.
stopped. Thank you so much.
Okay, cool. Bye.